Um, well, opening statement. When I first started the league, I'm on my 15th season. And if you would have told me within those first 3 to 5 years that Arkansas and Kentucky would be playing in a weekend series in April and both teams were in the top part of the league, I would have said you were crazy. I mean, it just goes to show you how competitive the league has come. I kind of think of it more like the NFL in terms of the the parity among the league has really started to shift the last few years. All the schools are now putting resources into the sport of softball. They're putting a lot of money into facilities, into coaching. The student athletes are getting better and better. We're drawing a lot of great athletes into the sport of softball that would have naturally played other sports. And just the women are getting strong and fast and everything. So the parity among the league is awesome, and just looking forward to a great series.
Great. If you got a question, you can just send me a chat or you can raise your hand. Either one works, and I'll just call on you as we go through until we're out of questions. So Larry, we'll start with you.
Hey, Rachel, just wondering, with the way Taylor Ebbs seems to have been coming on for you the last few games, how important is that at this time of year? And did you kind of sense she was about ready to do this?
Oh yeah, Taylor's awesome. One of my favorite freshmen coming in. She's strong. She knows the game. She's incredibly athletic, but most importantly, she's so coachable. She receives coaching well, and she's all about her team winning. Even though she was at one point Oregon's Gatorade Player of the Year, but she's all about the team. And I think when you have that mindset, you can adapt quicker at the SEC level. She's all about winning games. She's not about herself per se. So she just knows she has a role. She has a job. She's confident in her abilities, but I knew that she would definitely be a main player in our offense. And it's just important for us right now because anyone who'll know you need to be strong at the bottom so that you can continue to turn the lineup over. And the fact that we're getting that kind of production from her, whether she's in the middle of the order or the bottom half of the order, really is going to help us moving forward.
Don Long?
Rachel, your team seems to be pretty good road team. I think the record is 7-3. What type of mentality does it take to win on the road in the SEC? And does this team have that type of mentality?
It definitely has the mentality. I think the thing is you have to be good from coming from behind. You have to be okay being in pressure situations. And we've actually been behind in so many games this year that and our ability to fight back and to get back into games has happened over and over and over again. And I think from those experiences, well, it's not ideal and we've taken some losses because of it, but we've also come back and win some pretty big games as well. So I just think the fact that we're resilient is what you need to be good on the road. And I think that we've had so many opportunities to experience that we're pretty good in that situation and we can stay steady in our approach.
What has it been like this year? Has it been different? I mean, with that COVID pause last year, it seems like that a lot of the fans are back with a vengeance. Do you find that it's been a little bit more difficult to win? Are they more rabid out there?
I don't know if the fans are more, SEC fans are the best in the country, like bar none. Even if they're yelling at you and they hate you, you still love that because there's fans in the stands. The only thing, what you don't like doing is playing those midweek games where nobody's showing up and the stadium is empty and you don't hear the crowd noise and you don't get that energy level, whether it's your fans cheering you on or the other team yelling at you, you still get a bump from it. And it's fun. It's that's why we make stadiums and put all the money we do. And so I think it's great. I think the hardest thing about COVID is they might experience this in football, but we have not experienced this in softball. 18-year-olds are playing against 24-year-old women, and the physical difference between the two and the approach and the mentality, it's hard. And I think that's one of the reasons that you've seen the ERAs in the sport of softball just climb. The other thing that makes it difficult is people who do very well recruiting in the transfer portal. I mean, you have lineups that are made with, 5 super seniors or whatever the case is. And that's a really tough thing to manage from the pitching side of the game. So you're seeing inflated ERAs within the SEC. And I think a lot of that has to do with COVID and with the influx and the number of super seniors we have. And I don't think that's going away for the next couple of years. So I think that's one of the unintended consequences is the And, it's just not a level playing field when you have a 24-year-old going against a 18 and 19-year-old. It's not even close to level. So depending where your team was in the process when COVID hit, really created an uneven balance.
Cameron Drummond.
Hey there, Rachel. Good seeing you again. You kind of talked about, the mentality to win on the road just a second ago, but especially for this year's team, how much has it been building off the success that you found at Alabama and at LSU leading into a weekend like you're about to have now?
Oh, I think it's big. The Alabama, so we took one on Sunday, which was awesome. And then on Friday and Saturday, we were in it and against elite level pitching. That's the key. Anybody can win games, but can you win games against elite level pitching? And then LSU, you go into LSU and their crowd is really into it. It's a great stadium. They're on top of you sort of situation and they're yelling at you the whole time. So it was a really cool environment from that standpoint. And to be able to come from behind and hit their elite level pitching as well, I think gave our offense a lot of confidence. And then I think that helped us this past weekend when we played Ole Miss, when we didn't play great. We had a ton of mistakes on Friday, but then we came back and won the series on Sunday when we had a doubleheader. So I think just all of those experiences we've had against elite level pitching in tough environments has just made us more resilient. And honestly, it's more normal. If that's anything, we're just consistently going in there and playing, and we're not getting too high or too low. It's just another day in the SEC.
Mark Mathis.
Coach, I was just wondering, what kind of contributions has Lauren Johnson made this year, and just, kind of how's her level of play been just overall this season?
Oh, Lauren's great. She's somebody who early on in her career, we had her in the infield because that's what she was by trade. But when we graduated out Bailey Vick, we really needed to have an outstanding outfielder. So to be able to make that switch over to left field, when she really hadn't seen balls from that position, she's gotten better and better. And this year she has made so many unbelievable catches that I believe have saved games for us. The other thing that offensively, she is somebody since her freshman year, when she gets up to bat, you always think something can happen. She's strong, she's fast, she's very competitive, and more so to the point that we've had to take her from the top of the order and put her behind Koffel and Abernathy, even though she's not your typical power hitter that you would put in the middle of the order. She's just so tough and gives you so many good at bats that we needed somebody to protect those two. And she was the obvious choice in our lineup. She means everything to the team. And I believe she's going to be my first ever graduate student who's going to graduate from Kentucky softball. Like, we've typically had a younger team. Our players typically graduate in 4 years. So I've just never even had a graduate student around. So her steadiness and just knowing the program, and she's really helped the younger kids grow and develop and just get better a lot sooner. If she wasn't here, I don't know that you would have seen the maturity as fast.
Eric Lopez, good to see you, buddy. Go ahead.
Good to talk to you again, Coach. What do you see as you prep for Arkansas? What stands out about them on tape? And do you see similarities in how Courtney's built her program and building Arkansas up, like how you've built Kentucky up?
Well, the thing that, they're good at everything this year. They can hit 1 through 9, and they don't just hit, they hit home runs 1 through 9. So, they can put crooked numbers up on the board in a hurry. And then when you couple that with their outstanding pitching staff, obviously Mary Half's been well documented, but Dels has come in and she's actually starting to hit her stride. Early on, you didn't see it, but now you're seeing it. And I think some of that's just being comfortable in the SEC and probably comfortable with Courtney as her pitch caller. And so you're starting to see them. They're getting better and better every weekend, and they're just a force to reckon with. I do think there's similarities. I think that number one, I'm the pitching coach and the head coach calling the pitches and was a catcher. Courtney is the same in that regard. And I think so from that standpoint, that seems to be the foundation, the rock of the program, because we put the pressure on ourselves to make sure we keep the runs down. And as we've done so, we've built the programs and around us. I think the other similarity is, she's had a very consistent staff over the years, clearly showing her loyalty to them. And, I've had a very consistent staff. I've had the same staff the entire time I've been at Kentucky, pretty much, and Coach Himes. And then Molly's been with us over gosh, I don't even know, 11 years, and she played here. So you see the consistency in building the program that way as well. And I genuinely believe that Courtney cares about her players. You know, you see a lot of piecemeal a lot of times and a lot of lip service, but I actually think it's true when it comes from their program. I think that she does care about the players. I think she wants, you know, she cares about them not just between the white lines, but I think she genuinely has their best interest in heart. And I think because of that, people play hard for her. So, I mean, I have nothing but respect for her program and what she's built. And I believe she's going to continue to do it on and on and on. She seems to have the recipe for success.
Larry?
Hey, Rachel, talk a little bit about what kind of season you feel Kayla is having. She spoiled us so much last year looking at those numbers. You see, she's only hitting 417 this year. So how do you feel she's done this year, especially with the expectations from last year?
I think she's doing well. I think there's been a couple of new things this year that are, you know, they talk about stress innings in pitching. Okay. So you don't want to put, you know, there's a difference between coming in and pitching in a game when you have the lead or when you're getting blown out versus if it's a close game and you have a lot of stress. And I think that applies to other situations, not just pitching. And I think in Kayla's situation, she's had to play through a lot of stress innings. The reason being is, well, obviously last year she had numbers that were video game numbers, and you know, going through it, knew that was going to be hard to replicate. That's why during the postseason, people are like, "Oh, she's young. You know, we'll give the awards to other people because, you know, she's got another opportunity to do that," not knowing how special the season was she was putting up. So I think you have that, but I think more than anything, she's had to catch new pitchers. And she's constantly catching different pitchers. And so I think that keeps her mind in like a high level. She never gets to relax ever during a game. And then in the new era of, you know, NIL, it's not that I don't know anything about NIL appearances. I don't know that that's the case, but she is incredibly popular. So even yesterday when we were at our Louisville game, like she's standing next to the backstop and you had a ton of kids coming saying hi to her and being like, "Hey, you know, Kayla, you're my favorite player," and all that. And she gets that all the time. And it's before games, during games, after games, whatever. And I think she loves it. And I think she's an incredible ambassador for the sport and she's great for the kids, but I'm sure that adds an extra element of, I don't want to say a little bit of a distraction, not that she's handling it fine, but she's constantly switching her brain back and forth. So I think that she's just got a lot on her plate. The nice thing is I really, you know, she started out, she's good. She went through a little bit of a lull, and then against Ole Miss, she seemed to broke out of it a little bit in that series. And then last night against Louisville, she was great. So you're just hoping that, you know, I always tell our team, you never know. You're always one great opportunity away from believing in yourself and believing in what you can do. So you never know when that one opportunity is going to hit you. And I'm just hoping that she remembered, you know, what it is that she's capable of doing this past weekend against Ole Miss, and then be able to take that momentum moving forward.
Justin?
Coach, I want to circle back to Arkansas series. You mentioned early on, you know, when you first got to Kentucky, this series would not have meant what it means now.
Oh, no. It would have been like, who's going to be last place in the SEC? It definitely would not have had the same. And that's a fact. I mean, you could go back to numbers. I'm not being harsh. It's true.
How much does the way both programs have built over the last decade plus, how much does that add to going in this weekend where instead of playing for last place, you're playing for a share of first place?
It's a good question. I think it's fun. I don't know that it adds pressure per se, because every time you step out on the field, you're in pressure. You're feeling pressure, right? You're feeling pressure to host the NCAA tournament. You're feeling pressure to get your 500 record at the beginning of the year. You're feeling pressure not to get swept on the road. Like, you know, the SEC pressure hits you all the time. And I think it, you know, for coaches, I mean, every year you're SEC, you're like, you're fighting for your job sort of situation. And that pressure hits you early on. And so I think that we're all used to pressure. And so when you get into a situation when you're fighting for first place or whatever the case is, it's more fun than it is like I don't know. I think that takes the pressure off. I don't think either team's going into this game feeling any pressure. I think both teams are just going to game plan. They're going to get after it and see what can happen. And I think because of that, you'll see good play out of both teams.
John Wall?
Rachel, Alexia Lacatina came in with a lot of fanfare this year. She's had kind of a quiet season. How would you assess her adjustment so far, and what do you look for her in the future?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. She does have a lot of fanfare, and it's all deserved. On the international stage, she is very good. International softball is not SEC softball, and it's hard for people to understand that because it's different in different sports. But so in international play, you're relying more on yourself. In her case, because she's so young, she was constantly with her parents, meaning because COVID hit, she was able to move to Italy. She lived with her parents. Her parents helped her practice. Her day-to-day workout was with, her family. And then she would go play pro ball with the adults and stuff like that until they finally hit international stage. So it's a very different environment. When you come to college, you're taken out of the environment, now all of a sudden you're practicing all the time, and you're practicing with players, and you're with coaches, and now you have a different type of scouting, and your expectation level is very different in terms of schoolwork, in terms of lifting, in terms of, it's just it's a more concentrated feel. And so when you're a freshman, you first got to learn what to do before you can even get good at anything. You got to learn how to maneuver yourself through the daily grind of everything. And so I think that plays a toll on every freshman, and the speed that you can learn how to manage yourself and how to manage from place to place will determine kind of the speed of which you get better. And I think we're finally starting to see her really understand how to maneuver the grind of college and SEC softball. And it really, this past weekend against Ole Miss, her complete game, I thought, was great. She hit her spot. She did what she needed to do. She looked like she was in control of the situation instead of just relying on her team or relying on me as her pitch caller or whatever to get her out of situations. She got herself out of situations. And so now I think you will start to see the upward climb of everything that she's capable of doing. I think she's hit that point, and now she's ready to take off. And so I think moving forward, we'll start to see that more and more the end of this year. And then of course, taking that momentum into next year where, she'll probably take over the ball.
Larry, thought?
Yeah, Rachel, a couple of weeks ago, I asked you whether it was a good or bad thing that you were using so many pitchers. And you said it kind of depended on what the day was, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you feel like over the last couple of weeks, you're kind of seeing a few kind of start to emerge? And where does Tatum Spangler kind of fall in the importance of what you need for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I still am on the fence of whether it's good or bad. But we are starting to see pitchers really come in and command their performance. And so Tatum against the LSU series was outstanding. Had Tatum not done what she did, we would not have won that series. She did the same thing against Auburn. Her ability to mix speeds and just give a different look from the left side is crucial to us now, and it's crucial to us moving forward into the postseason. And then what you saw this past weekend. So you saw, Schoonover started out great, and then she got into a tricky situation where, she just wasn't, getting it done. So she had to come out of games early. And because of that, we were relying really on we were going to our long relief situation, short relief closing, all that sort of stuff. And we were using multiple pitchers. Well, this past weekend, Schoonover had a great game, almost a complete game. And then last night, obviously coming up with a no hitter was outstanding. So she's starting to find her level as well. And then Lacatina coming up with a complete game. So now I'm going to have to probably rethink my starting, relieving type situation. If you would have told me on Sunday that we would have completed a double header with just, basically two pitchers with, obviously Sullivan came in and closed out the game one. But if you would have told me that we were going to go through that day, I would have said, no way. Like in my mind, I was planning all 7 going at some point. And so really goes to show you that they're really competing for their spot. They're actually competing to put the team on their back and win games. And because of that, we're having some great performances on the mound.
Justin?
Hey, Coach, this coming weekend, I know you've got your scouting reports and all that kind of stuff. What do you feel like is going to be the determining factor in this series? And I know it's going to hurt your pitching coach heart, but do you feel like it's going to be home run derby at some point?
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be a home run derby at some point. So I think the determining factor, like that doesn't bother me. Like I think if I went in there thinking, well, if we can just keep them from hitting a home run, we're going to win it. Well, when they hit the first home run in the first inning, then you're going to be like, oh, there goes the series, right? So you can't go into it with that mindset. I think we've got to play clean defense. Every single game that we have lost this year has been because we have had really some terrible defensive play. And I love our defense. I love the people who play defense, but when we don't play defense, we don't win. It's that simple. So we're going to have to play clean defense. So when the ball is kept in the park, we're going to have to field it to keep the runs down. And conversely, Mary Half, when she's not striking people out, she induces a lot of weak pop-ups. And it's going to be essential that we keep the ball, like hit hard line drives and keep the ball so that they have to play some defense. Like nobody ever plays defense against them because of how the way that they pitch, and they do such a great job pitch calling as well. So it's going to be important that we barrel up on the ball, force them to play defense, and then come up with our timely hits. And then, that we play defense. So when they get their big hits, the score is manageable. They just let it get out of control fast. And that's the key. We got to keep the runs down.
Eric, go ahead.
Coach, what's the one thing that maybe has surprised you about this team, or you've learned about this team during the year that you didn't know going into the season?
Ooh. Well, surprising was when Scholes said that we're number one in ERA in the SEC. Not that I think we have a good ERA, but that if you would have told me going into the season, I would have said we were going to be 13. Not because I like our pitchers, but we're just so inexperienced when you go into the SEC. So they're going to kill me for saying that. And plus I'm the pitching coach. So, right. That's like fire that person. But I think that's the biggest surprise. And they're doing well. They're holding their own and they're keeping us in games, which I think is awesome. I would say offensively, it's not necessarily a surprise to me, but she's really come on her own is Riley Smith. I think that, she was always comfortable kind of hiding down there at the bottom of the order, whatever. And she's really taken her role as being, one of our better hitters. And she's kind of blossoming right in front of my eyes. She's also getting a little feisty with me, which I like. Some stuff like that. I know when a kid does that, then they finally arrived. And last night I was like, all right, you got a bunt down or whatever. She's like, I got all my bunts down against LSU. So I can see the fight in her now. And so I think that that's something I don't know that I would have expected. Sort of, she's always had the talent, but just she's putting the mind together with it. So that would be my two things I would think right now.
John Wong?
Rachel, I was watching you on one of the interviews on the telecast, and you kind of threw yourself under the bus. I think you criticized yourself for your calling the pitches that you called, but not every coach is willing to do that, especially on national TV. So since you are so willing to criticize yourself, what are maybe some of the things that you could have done better this year that you look back on with the team and handling the team that maybe you regret?
I think that I would say, I'm not one of those like back in the day, people were tougher and all that sort of stuff. I'm really not one of those. I think people by nature are people. I do think habits are different. I just think that most people cannot respond to pressure. And so the way that you frame pressure, I think is key in today's day and age. And I think it's key to being able to get the player to reach her potential. So I think early on, I put a lot of pressure on maybe Erin Koffel to make the plays a little bit more than she does. And she's the type of person you don't need to put pressure on to make plays because she puts too much of it on herself. So I wish I would have handled her a little bit differently early on. With that said, I think that she's in a good place now. So I think that she's fine, but you always wish that you did things sooner, and not just her, but I think defense in general. We still make a ton of mistakes defensively, but I don't know how much of that is just they put the pressure on themselves to make the plays, or they're just not, for whatever reason, not reading the ball right or making the play or whatever. So right now I'm on the fence with that. And I think you can't win if you don't have great defense. So I wish I would have handled that situation a little bit differently. Pitching. I don't know. I don't know how I would have handled it differently. I do think we have a lot of pitchers and that's not my preference. And I think it's hard to get your playing time in there. With that said, I think that because we have so many position players that pitch, that's creating matchup issues. I would like to have a little bit more concentrated, a little bit smaller pitching roster, just mostly so that the individual pitchers can, get more time so that they can develop quicker. With that said, I don't know how I would have done it with the roster. That's something that would need to happen with roster management. But here in a year, I'm about ready to graduate 4 at the same time. So it's kind of one of those waiting things. So I think those two things are something that I really need to figure out how to do a little bit better.
And we'll close today with Eric Lopez.
Speak to the character of this team. I think back to the LSU series. You were trailing in each game, faced adversity, came back, won that series, swept them. You dropped the first game against Ole Miss, come back, win the doubleheader. Speak of that character and that fight of your team that have kind of been battle tested here as you head to Arkansas and head through the rest of the season here.
Well, that's kind of what this particular team knows. We lost some key players last year, but some people have stepped up and done well. But even last year in regionals, I mean, we just made the biggest boneheaded defensive mistakes ever and put our backs against the wall and won it. And it's kind of like we've done it. So this sounds terrible, but we've done this so many times that we have figured out how to stay focused and come back. Now, obviously, it's easier to come back when you have someone like a Kayla Kowalik on your team or Renee Abernathy does well under pressure. Koffel's good under pressure. So is Johnson. Like you have a lot of players that are really good under pressure. And I think the thing about this team is if you look at our stats individually right now, I would say we only have like 1 or 2 players that are looking like they would be all conference in terms of individual stats. And I think they're all very aware of it. And they all know if we're going to go anywhere, we got to go there together. And so I think they never quit because they're always playing for their teammate with their teammate. I think that's a key to keep fighting is that, you're doing it with your friend, your buddy, and you just don't want to let them down. So I think that's pretty much the character of this team. I don't think a lot of them, we do have superstars, but they don't act like superstars. And, they just play well together and they like each other. So I think they're having fun more than anything.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for your time. We